Ladies and gentlemen, fellow patriots and freedom-loving Americans, welcome back to another episode of The Source. Rule breakers, lawmakers, and influencers. This is The Source, where rules get broken for the greater good, laws get made to serve the people, and influence drives us forward. Today's episode, we'll be speaking with Alex Pelbath, congressional candidate for South Carolina District 1. Alex is a decorated combat veteran and retired lieutenant colonel who served in the United States Air Force. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you for having me on. Great to be here.
Good to see you, buddy. Good to put a face with the voice.
Yeah, likewise.
So you're running for Nancy Mace's seat. She was South Carolina 1, right? She's running for governor.
Correct.
For South Carolina. So what made you decide to get into the race?
Well, it kind of goes back to the end of my Air Force career. So I graduated the United States Air Force Academy in 2001, right before 9/11 happened. And then I served for 22 years, almost the entire time as a pilot, except for a few years stint I did out of the Pentagon. And so I spent the entirety of my career at war. And then in 2021, I was the air mission commander for the final withdrawal from Kabul. I'm sure most people will remember that disaster that the Biden administration created. And I actually ended up flying the last aircraft out of Afghanistan. And that experience, coupled with really the last few years of my career in general, experiencing firsthand the devastating consequences of some of these career politicians' weak leadership. I mean, we saw it, the detriment of American values and policy being played out on a world stage. I certainly experienced that type of stuff in the military. And after retiring from the Air Force, I just kind of realized that I wasn't made to sit on the sidelines. I think there's still a war going on in our country. I just think the battlefield has shifted. And after discussion with my family, we realized that God made us to serve. And this is the next avenue in which we're going to do that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, give me a sense of morale under President Biden, right? Especially during that withdrawal period compared to, I'm sure you keep in contact with your brothers and sisters from the military now. What's the attitude, the tenor compared to just 11 months ago?
Yeah, I think the most obvious part is just to look at what's happening in recruiting. We have the highest recruiting rates in the military that we've seen in, I think, like 20 years. It's amazing. People want to be in. And, after Secretary Hegseth and President Trump called all the generals together and gave that speech, I mean, my personal social media was blowing up with a lot of folks who said, man, I wish I was back in. How do I get back in the military? I think there's a lot of positivity around what the administration is doing. And it's specifically because we're focused on warfighting. People sign up. We enter the military to fight for America. And there's a heavy toll that comes with that personally, and of course on all of our families. All of our families serve alongside us. And so anything that detracts from that can be very, very frustrating when you're in the military. Seeing all the DEI and the wokeness that I experienced firsthand it makes it less enjoyable, and it makes you less certain that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. So I will give a lot of credit to the leaders in the military. Look, we don't get bogged down by that type of stuff. We have a mission to carry out. And I'll take the Afghanistan as a perfect example. The withdrawal from Kabul is a perfect example. What I saw out there was incredible leadership from the United States military. I mean, that ended up being the largest airlift evacuation in the history of the world. And we did it despite all of the policies that sort of created the mess and the policies that were being implemented while we were out there fighting the war. So the military's always been fantastic at putting politics aside and getting the job done. So on a day-to-day basis, it made our job way harder serving under the Biden administration. But make no mistake, we're really good at what we do, and we're still able to get the job done.
Yeah, it also seems like that gave you a valuable skill that will carry forward into Congress, right? The ability to compartmentalize between what your personal feelings are or, how you like or dislike a situation versus the job that needs to get done. and the end goal, which, in Congress is serving the American people, not serving special interests, not serving yourself. And there is a certain extent, of course, your personal values that are brought into the office and how you wish to represent your district. But there will be times where those feelings need to be put aside because it's the greater mission, right?
Yeah. We saw some of that. A couple of things. One, I love the intro to your show, Rule Breakers. I've sort of turned my experience in Afghanistan into a keynote speech on leadership. And my first leadership lesson that I present to my audience is great leaders break the rules. Mm-hmm. So I love that you started with that, and we have so many examples of these policies that were put on us that just didn't work, and so you do what you got to do to get the mission done. I did quite a few media hits when I got back from Afghanistan. I was the Air Mission Commander. That came out. I was on Fox News for it, and so I developed this talking point, which I think hits exactly what you're saying now. Is the U.S. military did an amazing job given the constraints with which we were forced to work. Mm. That was sort of my nonpartisan talking point while I was still.
100%. So, you're going to be representing South Carolina 1. I have a very traditional sort of constitutional sense of what a rep should be, right? And, you're there to represent your district as well as the greater mission of President Trump, as well as, the Republican caucus, the America First caucus. Is probably a better way to articulate it. So what are some of the most important issues for South Carolina? And then we can go into the broader national issues of supporting President Trump and the America First MAGA agenda.
Yeah, look, I'm very fortunate to live in this district. There's a lot of American-loving patriots here. Very fortunate. So what our issues are actually parallel a lot of the national issues. So we had border security matters here. What we've learned in South Carolina is that all states are now border states, unfortunately. I mean, there was in this district, there was a huge raid just a few months ago that broke up some criminal illegal aliens who were into prostitution and drugs and child trafficking. That was right here in our own district. So those are the things that still matter, that even though President Trump's done an incredible job of closing the borders, right? Like border crossings are essentially nil at this point. What we're seeing is the fight sort of moved into our borders, and we still have to continue to battle that type of thing. Similarly with the economy, we're seeing with the government shutdown, we see one side putting self-interest ahead of what's best for the American people. Mm-hmm. And we care very much here in our district in free market and policies that benefit the American economy and that will improve GDP. We want to attack the deficit. We don't do it by raising taxes. We do it by growing the economy. We know this is a mass problem that has to deal with GDP. I mean, the Biden era GDP was at 1.7%. I mean, we'll never get the deficit to come down. But a 3.7, if you've seen President Trump's economic policy advisors briefing on this, at 3.7% GDP, the deficit goes to zero in 40 years. So growing the economy matters. How do we continue to put forth policies that benefit all South Carolinians? And first and foremost on that, of course, is continuing the Trump tax cuts.
What are some things that South Carolina is industries or ways in which you can represent the interests of to all of South Carolina, not just your district, but that where South Carolinians can participate in the greater agenda that President Trump is building with manufacturing, onshoring, energy independence, et cetera?
Oh, you nailed a lot of those topics right there. So we're a major, my district, the 1st Congressional District, South Carolina, is a major military district. We will soon to have the largest Coast Guard base in the United States. We have the base at which I was stationed, Charleston Air Force Base, Joint Base Charleston, which is a naval weapons station. We have Beaufort, which is a huge Marine Corps town, a ton of patriots who have served or are continuing to serve down in that area. Literally all services are represented here in the district. And so that matters tremendously. We have Boeing is here. We have now one of the fastest growing ports on the East Coast in our Charleston Harbor. And so that's a huge what people in our district realize that maybe the rest of the country doesn't realize, and honestly, I haven't seen this from our politicians, is how incredibly important the Port of Charleston is to the United States of America. Any threat to that port, anything that would degrade shipping in and out of here, which look, we have infrastructure problems where I live. Like this, Charleston's the best city in America. Okay, I live in the best district in America. But because of that, everybody is moving here. Everybody wants to be in this great district. Well, that's created some infrastructure problems. Well, those infrastructure problems are going to delay some of these national interests we have, like the port, like the military bases. Our military families can't afford to live around the base. They're having to move further and further and further away because of expenses. Military pay isn't going up. We're not paying our troops anymore, but certainly things are getting more expensive in America, and that certainly affects this district. So I think there's national security interest in what is happening in the First Congressional District of South Carolina, and because of that, I mean, there should be budget provisions. This you want to attack the infrastructure here in South Carolina? That's how we do it. We make the federal government understand there's national security interest to what South Carolinians are doing, specifically here in the first.
So, I mean, you definitely have a big job ahead of you, given the demographics of South Carolina and specifically Charleston. Definitely, your military service and experience in the military is going to come through. I did read in your bio that you've got your MBA. So, beyond just flying in the Air Force, what other responsibilities did you have that go back to that leadership, compartmentalize, being able to focus on the mission?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, being a pilot's fun. It's fun. Flying airplanes is certainly fun, but leading people, being a commander, I would say, to answer your question, first and foremost, I was a commander for the final 4 years of my career, both of a traditional C-17 squadron, and then I ran our special operations unit. So the command level, look, I have no experience being a politician. I would say I have a lot of experience in politics. Politics exists in the military, and as a commander, you're certainly working those avenues to affect policy and take care of your people locally, but also at a national level. And then I spent 4 years in the Pentagon, and that was a tremendous experience for me. I had the opportunity to work in the Air Force budget office. So I was a budget policy guy. I was working with Congress. I was writing position papers to professional staff members on Congress to try to help get the Air Force budget passed. And then I had the opportunity to work for a fantastic American, a fantastic Marine, a man named General Joe Dunford. I was served on his staff when he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs. So that experience in helping to build and shape and certainly just learn how national policy is made. Nobody in this race has that type of experience besides me.
Yeah, and I think that we've got enough lawyers in Congress, right? We need people who have real world experience, leadership experience, who have been forced to work within budgets, who understand how the bureaucracy works, how the chain of command works. And that's really what I think what we want to see, sort of the entrepreneurial class. We want to see leaders who and members of Congress and Senate who have practical real world experience. I mean, if you look at President Trump, he's done more in 10 months than anybody has done in the past, and that's because he's an outsider with a vast experience, years of experience in solving problems from a different perspective, right? Not in, well, this is how we've always done it. This is how it needs to be. And so definitely, I think the fresh perspective. Now, I don't think an actor qualifies as a candidate, and I'm referring to our friend up in New York, or I should say our non-friend up in New York. But I think that when people go to the polls, they should be looking at people who have accomplishments in their life beyond academia, who have worked in a variety of situations that qualify them to be a good leader, a good decision maker, and an objective thinker. And I don't think we have as much of that in Congress as we should.
I agree, and I think there's a lack of perspective from a lot of our members in Congress. Either they've been there too long, or they have, like you're mentioning, the lawyer experience, other experiences that don't connect the dots. So there are federal policy. There is an end to that federal policy, and it's the everyday American. It's us. And people who don't understand that, who haven't lived it and felt the result of actual policy decisions being made, don't have the perspective to understand the implications of some of their actions. And a couple things that I always say, what I learned as a budget guy working on economic policy is, if you really want to see what somebody values, look where they spend their money. There's not dollars behind it. If something's not resourced, then it's just an idea. It's not an actual policy. And so I think the same can be said for just motivations in general. Well, you want to see what really motivates people. Well, look where they're enacting policy. Look where they're spending their money up there. And then my experience being on the tail end of policy. Look, I'll share a quick story from the withdrawal in Afghanistan. Look, we all know it didn't go well. I think what most people maybe don't realize or don't remember was that first chaotic day where you see a C-17 surrounded by Afghans, and then that C-17 takes off, and there's people hanging on it, and we all kind of watch, Two young guys on my team. I won't say their names, but I watch this as the bodies start falling from an airplane.
Wow.
Well, that was the first day. That was only day one of that withdrawal. I mean, this thing went on for 17 more days, and right in the middle of it, it's tough. We're flying every day, and it's just not going well. We have this arbitrary deadline of August 31st, and there's no way we're going to make it, right? It's essentially a math problem we're trying to solve. We got so many people we got to get out. We only have so many days to do it. We only have so many airplanes to do it with, and there's just no way we're going to make it. Well, after a particularly tough day, it's like 2 a.m. I'm in the chow hall, we call it, with my other pilots, and we just happen to see on the news, Al Jazeera station, and the Taliban spokesman has come on TV. And the Taliban spokesman says, he gives us an ultimatum. He says, August 31st is a line in the sand. America will be gone by August 31st. But you can imagine how we felt watching this, being involved in this on a day-to-day basis, and then hearing the Taliban give us this sort of ultimatum. Our response immediately was, dang it, we better see the president on TV tomorrow, reminding the Taliban who they are and who we are. Well, we did see President Biden on TV the next day. And instead of saying that, he bowed down to the Taliban, and he doubled down on that August 31st end date. So, this told us two things. One, that the president's the commander in chief, right? This is our commander. Our commander doesn't have our backs, and things are going to get harder before they get easier. And they did. Yeah. Because 2 days later was the bombing at Abbey Gate that killed 13 Americans.
Yeah.
There are real consequences to policymakers' decisions. And I felt that. I mean, this, if you really want to get down to why I'm running, why I need to be in this fight, it's because of that. It's because I understand that the decisions our policymakers make have real consequences for all the rest of us Americans.
100%. It's funny. I was at a meeting a few weeks ago. A good friend is a former Marine, and we were talking about setting goals and having accomplishments, and and he had said to me, he's like, you have steak budget problems, but we have hamburger problems. And I think it's a real articulation of how Congress is so disconnected from the people that they are voted in to serve, especially long-term congressional representatives, right? Because they oftentimes don't understand the policies that they implement and how they trickle all the way down to the American people that they're there to serve. And, I'll just use, sort of the classic 3% cost of living adjustment that happens to salaries, right, in corporate America, et cetera. Well, I'm going to make the assumption that carries over to the military. And when you look at an area like Charleston, or you look at an area like here in West Palm Beach, where industries moving in, the people who've been living here for a long time are starting to get priced out. Housing is very expensive. When you're looking at the military, you can't look at the United States as a blanket canvas for what is an appropriate cost of living adjustment. Because if you're in a Charleston, South Carolina base, maybe you need a 7% adjustment, right? If you're in Bozeman, Montana, maybe it's 3%, maybe it's 2%, but Congress needs to have that perspective, or a better perspective. And when you have a candidate like yourself who's coming from working every day and putting food on the table every day, and having been in the military and seeing what your compensation schedule was from when you joined to 22 years later when you left, and the young men and women that are serving under you, right? It's a much different perspective than a lot of congressional folks have. And it's the fresh perspective that I think we need.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that. I agree. Obviously, obviously I agree. If I thought there was a better candidate, I wouldn't be running, but yeah. I just don't think anybody has that perspective that you're mentioning to run in this district. And, one of the other benefits I have is 22 years, I've lived a lot of places. I've lived in a lot of different areas. I wish I could have been living here in Charleston. We first came here in 2003. And given the choice, my wife and I fell in love with this place immediately. We have been here ever since, but that's not the way it works. Being able to live in this area my entire life and serving the military are mutually exclusive. You can't do it. So for 22 years, the military moved us around. We finally got to come back. But one of the experiences that I bring that is unique is I've lived in a lot of blue states. So the Air Force sent us to Illinois, Washington, California, lived in Northern California for a while, and then DC before I came here from the Pentagon. I understand more than most what that type of policy does to the people who are living in those states. We have abnormally high taxes here in South Carolina. I know a lot of people are fighting against this. This is the number one thing our governor's candidates are running on right now is we got to lower the taxes here. I would say we're very blessed, very fortunate that we do live in South Carolina. It is not the same living here. And that perspective will make me the hardest fighter for the values of South Carolina in the 1st Congressional District, because I know I have suffered under blue state leadership.
Have you ever seen the movie The Patriot?
Of course, yes.
Yeah, so, you kind of remind me of the Mel Gibson-esque, he was a war hero, right? Then he became a representative from South Carolina, right? And so now the fight is just in a different place, right? The fight's now in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, it really is. And I really feel like certainly we saw what happened with Charlie Kirk, that galvanized so much of us. It sort of changed. Like, I don't look at this as Republican, Democrat anymore. Okay, this is right versus wrong in a lot of cases. Big caveat for all my Democrat friends that I serve with, all of them I love, when you serve next to somebody, when you go to war with somebody, politics really does not matter.
Just like there's no atheists in foxholes.
There you go. Exactly.
Right.
I love these guys. The difference is that, I kind of put them in two camps now. There's these folks, there's Democrats who love America.
Of course.
Just disagree on what's best. We want the best thing for America. We disagree on the road to get there. I just feel like that is a tiny part of the Democratic Party. Now, certainly the Democratic base at this point is not that. They don't want the best for America. They are actively trying to tear down all of the things that make America great. And to me, that is a battle space that I want to be in. That is a fight that I need to be fighting. And it's a fight that we can't give up either. I mean, we think about what's going to happen in 2026.
Yeah, it's most important.
Congress in 2026. We know exactly what they're going to try to do to the president. We know all of the great things that have happened that we've seen in these last 10 months, it all comes to a halt. Like this is a serious get out the vote year. I mean, my hope for America is that the mandate we saw in 2024, that we double down on that mandate in 2026. We just drive this point home that most of us who love this country, who understand how blessed we are to live here, we understand the cost of having this type of freedom, that all of us get out to the polls and we give President Trump that same mandate we gave him in 2024.
100%. And it's really interesting. We were having a conversation last night about the flippening of the Democrat and the Republican Party. And the Republican Party now represents the working class. Democrat, when I was growing up as a kid, the Democrat was the party of the working man. And that seems to have changed. The Democrat is now serving the fringe, rich, elite, liberal agenda instead of how do we help working class people achieve the American dream? How do we, create the structure for them to be able to excel? And so I just think that, where we're headed as a party, the more people who understand that the Democratic Party that you grew up with 30 years ago is not the party that represents your interests today, and that the Republican Party is the party that represents your interest.
Absolutely right. We're seeing this with the government shutdown right now. Mm-hmm. Obviously, just a couple of quotes from the left. What we saw with Schumer, that every day that the government is shut down is better for them. Mm-hmm. And then with the minority whip came out recently, and she said that she knows, we know Americans are suffering and it's worth it. That's the only leverage we have. That's what the Democratic Party thinks about America, that we are leverage.
Yeah. For it. Well, Marie Antoinette said, let them eat cake. It didn't work out well for her.
That is what we're rather Americans suffer. Mm-hmm. So push their own agenda through, mm-hmm. then take care of average Americans. To your point, we are the party of the working class. We are the party now of the everyday American. We're the party of facts and science. It is so wonderful being a Republican today. I would contrast that what Schumer's doing with what President Trump did recently. You saw that he found money to pay the troops.
100%.
Our troops are not supposed to get a paycheck. Okay, that's never happened before. Not only has that never happened before, think about this. That would have been great ammunition for the Republican Party mm-hmm. to say, look what the Democrats are doing. Our troops aren't getting paid. Mm-hmm. And despite that being a valuable talking point, President Trump did the right thing. The Republicans did the right thing and put Americans first. America first policy, Americans first. And mm-hmm. that's what we the Republican Party today.
100%. So how can people support you? Where can they go? How can they get involved if they're in South Carolina, if they're in other parts of the country and they want to make a contribution and support your efforts? How can they do it?
Thank you very much. Pelbathforcongress.com. That's probably the easiest way to start. Obviously, you can find me on social media. There aren't very many Pelbaths out there. You can find Alex Pelbath for Congress on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But the website's probably the best. And we do, that's the uphill battle we're fighting. Is I haven't been in this game ever. I've never been a politician. I've served in the military. I'm not walking into this writing my campaign an enormous check like we see from a lot of people these days. This is about serving America, doing what's best for America, for the future of America, for our kids. I have 2 kids in college right now. I'm feeling that burden, like so many of us. Yeah, absolutely the best way you can get involved. Reach out to me on social media or pelbathforcongress.com.
Awesome. Great chatting with you today, Alex. Good luck with the race, and look forward to supporting you. If you ever get down to West Palm Beach, we'd love to see you.
Well, we'll do it. I think I told you before, my daughter's at Palm Beach Atlantic.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I will get down to Palm Beach.
PBA is a great school.
Amazing.
Great contributor to local economy. Christian university, so just an amazing place. Really, really good programs for the kids. So look forward to seeing you.
Likewise.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Source. Rule breakers, lawmakers, and influencers. We look forward to seeing you next time.